talk about American history. And why I want to talk about American history is because we get it so wrong that it's not funny. So, the founding of our country, the Revolutionary War, was funded by patriots, by people who wanted to dedicate their life to getting democracy and freedom. But more than that, it was funded by France, as you know, through afterwards they wanted money. We had the XYZ affair, millions for defense, not a penny for tribute. But what we don't really talk about is a man named Amistad Rothschild. Now, you've heard the name Rothschild. You know they're one of, if not the richest family in the world, and that they've got their fingers in pretty much every pot. Amistad was the great, 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 great granddaddy of that family. And he made his money off the slave trade. He was a Dutch slave trader. In fact, he was one of the richest Dutch slave traders. And what's amazing about the fact is that even in our modern world today, the Dutch monarchy is the wealthiest monarchy on the planet. Now, I say monarchy, not government, not company, not person, the richest monarchy. Now, there's not many monarchies, of course, but most people think it's the British, the UK monarchy that has the most money. No, it is the Dutch monarchy, and a lot of that money is slave trade money. The only quotes I can find attributed to Rothschild is, "Why should I own a company when I can own a country?" And Rothschild had practiced this, I'll just call it financial influences, in several countries before America. A bunch of, not the Bahamas, but a bunch of little small island countries that even to this day keep switching hands because they have revolutions all the time. And I'm talking historically, not within the past year. I'm talking about historically as in the last 50 years. So he went to a lot of small island chains, a lot of small islands off the coast of South America, and were financing revolutions for them, and it worked for him. The side he backed usually won, which meant that the new government owed him. The problem was is that those places were notoriously unstable. So another rebellion was always just around the corner, so it was always a question of whether he could make his money back before the next government came in. Because when a new government comes in, they're not going to honor the debts of the old government usually. He saw America as a big land, very vast. Nobody knew what or how much resources it had, and he was going to get in on the ground floor. So he finances Washington to go start the Continental Army. So we win the Revolutionary War, and they made the Constitution. Well, before we won, but anyway, new government's formed. But what we don't really discuss is it's actually two governments at that point for the United States. And it's kind of that way still today. It's really weird because nobody talks about it. There is what's called the Title Code. Now, the Title Code is something that it doesn't necessarily, in the public eye, control the law, but it is the founding principles and the actual unbreakable laws of the United States, essentially. I don't really know how to term it because it's not really talked about. A lot of research I've done on title codes doesn't really tell you a lot. I don't even know all of them, and I've been researching it for a while. They're almost hidden, but what I've found out is that if you want to learn any procedure, method, rules, or regulations that our government has to work by, look at the title codes, because that's what's really running our country. Because he didn't need to have our government fall apart, because he and the other founding fathers were lining their pockets. It was in their best interest to keep this thing going. Washington, he was a great man. He almost single-handedly made our government real. Like, I know Hancock, Jefferson, they were all there, but he was framework of separations, he was first president, and he did a lot of good for this country. But at the same time, it was all about his pocketbook. He inherited some wealth. He did make money off surveying. He did a lot of investments, but the bulk of his money came from his wife. So that was pretty amazing for back in the day, but George was kind of a gigolo, and he married a wealthy widow. So that is where the bulk of his money came from. Now, he had his own plantation, and like I said, he did surveying, and his family was wealthy, so he did inherit some money, but the woman he married was richer than him. And I'm saying all this to point out that this man wasn't a hero of freedom. He was a rich man getting richer. And this man they made president for the first time in the United States, even though he did not hold the title. The actual title back then, I've read conflicting things, but I believe it was the President of Congress. And this first President of Congress was Jack Hansen. Now, what's amazing is Jack Hansen was black. He was a former, I'm using that in quotations because there's a lot of arguments about how former he was, slave. In fact, I've read some documents that say that he was Jefferson's slave. I don't really know. I've only found that in one place, and I don't really trust the source. But the point is that they founded this country and they put a man who would have been considered less up as the face of it. It doesn't make a lot of sense if this is truly the government. Now, I'm not saying that a black person shouldn't have been president, shouldn't have been president first. None of that. I'm just saying that if you were living in those times, would you really have respected a black president? And I'm sorry to say, it's not right, it's not moral, it's not anything, it's just what it was. They probably wouldn't have. So why would you make this man president? Like, there wasn't a vote or an election, they just threw him up there. And the reason why? They needed a puppet. He was the talking head. Nobody was listening, but he could talk all he wanted, and he wasn't going to get in their way. While they were running their businesses and making their trades and pillaging this country, but we have a president. He could stop us if we were doing wrong, right? Yeah, right. Now, to be fair, he only held office for around a year, and there were 6 other presidents of Congress who held varying terms of a few months to a little over a year. The problem the presidents of Congress ran into and why they separated the president was, number one, it made the separation of powers, which is very important to our system of government, clearer. You took him out of Congress. And number 2, the country was being run into the ground. Quite literally, we were printing money, much like we do today, yes, but the founding fathers were like, here's money. This represents people's labor. People will give us what we want for it because we say so, and that's how a country works, which is pretty much what they still do today, but you run into problems when you're not paying people in the government. They weren't paying congressmen. They weren't paying the president. They weren't paying the Supreme Court justices, which really didn't exist yet, but we'll get there. So what they established was something called the Federal Trust. Now, it's not the Federal Reserve. That's a totally different thing. I actually don't get to the Federal Reserve in this video, but I will in a later video, and it's a very important thing to talk about. But they established the Federal Trust, and they put all this money in the Federal Trust. This money was designed to not only pay for public works, roads, buildings, what have you, but also to support the people in government so that they were not being ripped off and cheated because they were working. They were running our government. They were not at home tending their livestock or running their business or whatever means of support they had previously had. And it was getting so bad before the Federal Trust that people wouldn't run for political office. George and his friends would come back and they would appoint people, and nobody said anything because nobody was running. There was literally nobody that even wanted to be in government. So they established the Federal Trust. They put bunch of money in it, and they said, here you guys go, now you're taken care of. Now, imagine an imaginary room, and you have a pot of money in it, and you put 50 people in there, and you say, take what you need, and then divvy out the rest for the good of the nation. What do you really think is going to happen? And that's what happened. They all ran over the pot, and they took as much as they could. And that's when Washington, now that we're at the most important man of our government, supposedly, the first one, the president, I think it's important to discuss a few things. First off is, why were they dealing with Rothschild? And that's because they didn't want to die. Okay, so They pulled in money from France, of course. You find out about that later, and we'll talk about XYZ affair and other stuff in future videos. But they realized that if they lost the war, King George wasn't going to be like, nice try, fellas. He was going to hang them. And they were losing. Why? You had freedom fighters that were using the rifles that they had laying around, and they were breaking. You had people that didn't have proper clothes. They were getting sick from common diseases because it was winter and they didn't have shoes. So he took funding from Rothschild because he knew that to lose was to die. So now he's president, and I want to discuss presidents. So we believe that our president is the most powerful person in the country, maybe even the world, depends how your view of things are. But I want to say this: he is not the most powerful person in the country. And the reason I said it is because although he has executive order authority, which pretty much lets him do whatever he wants, he still needs approval from Congress, or is supposed to have approval of Congress from a lot of things, and can be told what to do by the judicial branch by saying that something is unconstitutional and that he should do it another way. Now, often these powers get intermingled and usurped and changed, but there is an actual layout of the powers of each branch of the government, and the president, they're supposed to be equal. The president's not the ultimate say-so, is the point I'm trying to get to, but he is because he has executive order authority, and also he's the face of our country to the world. He's the one going over making treaties and deals with other countries, although Congress has to approve it after he makes the deal, which is really kind of weird. I mean, what if you were dealing with somebody like, I'm going to buy your car for $500. They say, oh, yeah, okay. And then you pull out the money and they go, wait, my wife didn't say yes. But that's the way it is. But what I want you to realize is not that the president isn't powerful, because he's very powerful, but the fact is that we're not the ones choosing him. We are not electing him. The Electoral College is electing him. The Electoral College isn't exactly a person, but it is a process by which people are selected. And we get no say in it. It is controlled by the parties. So what happens is when you vote for a president, you're voting for a political party. And if that party wins, they're supposed to allow that person to be president. I haven't found anywhere a rule that says they have to, nor have I found any incident where they didn't make the person that they put up as the face become president. But when you vote, you basically say, give this many electoral votes to the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party chooses that many electorates and those electorates meet and they vote in secret, and they choose the president, not us. It's a really weird system. It was set up that way originally because the founding fathers thought that the common man did not have enough education to be able to choose somebody for such an important office, as well as the fact that they didn't have transportation like we do nowadays. Could you imagine trying to campaign across the United States in a horse and buggy? I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, because you could make it across the country in a few days, but no, it was to alleviate the common man of such a burden. While they did campaign because you wanted your electorates to be behind you, they didn't need to win the popular vote, and they still don't. And even though our culture and our society and our technologies and the way things are done have changed, we have not updated this. And it bothers me to no end that we have literally no say in our government, or at least no say in the presidency. It's just, this is what we would like, and we hope they go along with us. That's kind of mind-blowing to me. Now, the president is very powerful, but does it make sense to anybody that we would tell all our national secrets to somebody who's only going to be around for 4 years, to somebody that doesn't get a security clearance through a vetting process? They get it because they were elected. Now, I'm not saying he's not powerful, he doesn't get the info. I'm just saying there's probably security levels above him. Those are the people that really run our government. So that means he's not running our government. Who's running our government then? The appointees. The head of the FBI, the head of the CIA, the head of the NSA, the head of the EPA, for God's sake. Why? Because these guys are in positions of power. They have the clearance they need to know, and they can make any decisions they want. And it makes sense that they would have a higher clearance level than the president because not only do they need the information, but they're going to be in that position for life. Now, we have the government that we think we elect, and we have the people that actually have the power. And we've seen that. We've seen that so much in recent events, but we still blame a president. It doesn't make sense. And then you have the Congress. You've got to think about no matter when you first elect these guys, no matter what principles they had, are they keeping them? Because these guys can spend more than 20 years in Congress. They could spend till they die in Congress. So you need to make sure they're keeping your values. And I don't think we do because we don't look at the congressional voting record. We don't know what they're voting for. Now, the congressional voting record is publicly accessible on the internet. We can literally see what they vote for and what they vote against. We can literally see what they choose not to vote on. But we don't look. We just listen to what they say and how they blame others for what they didn't do. But the fact is they don't know what we want because they don't care. What do they care about? Say it with me. Money. And that's what we're fighting against. And that's why we're losing. We have let our Congress, our politicians in general, but especially our Congress, go so far out of hand that they don't even read the bills anymore. That is their entire job, is to read it and make sure it's something you would want. And they don't even read it. How many times have you seen a politician get interviewed and get asked the big gotcha question of, well, you voted for this bill. Didn't you know it was going to do this? And they say, well, that might have been in there somewhere. We were more concerned with getting this part of it passed. I didn't read the whole thing. That's their entire job. And I don't think it's that they didn't read the entire thing. That's part of it. They have all these aides that just tell them you should or you shouldn't. I can understand that. But also, they know they're not in charge. They know it's all just a show. They're more concerned with just keeping the status quo going. And it even got so bad at one point that there was a bill. It was called the Fast Track Bill. Now, it did get voted down, thank God. And I don't know exactly what was in this bill, but guess what? Neither did they. And I'm not making this up. I'm not saying that they didn't read it. I'm saying they couldn't. This bill was supposed to be a foreign trade bill. It was under Obama's administration. And I'm sorry to pick on the Democrats. I know you think I'm hating on them. I'm not. These are just the facts. It was a foreign trade bill presented under the Obama administration, but they said it was so classified and there were so many national secrets in it that only 5 senators could read it. And, they selected the 5. I don't remember the names, but think about it. You want to make a bill that's a law that's going to change the way this country does business, and only 5 people can read it and come back and tell everybody else whether it's good or bad. That makes no sense. But this is how our country's operating, and we're not paying attention. We're too worried about what bathroom to use. This makes completely zero sense, and it's got to stop. I think that the reason that many political people, especially in Congress, were against Trump's tweeting was not because what he said was rude, mean, thoughtless, inane, and just wrong a lot of the times, was that he was actually doing it. Now, what I mean by that, and in no way do I support the majority of his tweets. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 out there that I might, but I haven't read all of them. But the ones I have read, complete garbage. He never should have done it. Agree. But I think the reason that they were so up in arms against it was not only was it a thing they could rally, again, common enemy, but the fact that he was doing it, the fact that he was letting people know what he thinks often. Think about how hard it would be for them to deceive you, not that they couldn't do it or wouldn't do it, if they were putting their thoughts out there on a regular basis and not just reading a prep script that they had weeks to write before they came and said it to you. Right now, your congressman comes out and says he's telling you what he's thinking, and he does this about every 2 years. He does this when it's time to vote to let you know that he still holds your values, but he's not telling you what he's thinking. He's telling you, shouldn't we hold our elected officials to a more stringent process? We have no idea what they vote for, what they vote on, what they stand for, but yet we're still putting them in there because they say the right things. We don't look at a record. We don't look at past actions. We don't look at what's going on in the world. Do they come on stage and do they say nice stuff and do they tell us how bad the other side is? It's pretty messed up. But we're going to move on. So the Federal Reserve was founded December 23rd, 1913, according to their website. However, this is wrong. That is when the agency charter was made. The actual laws that enacted to create a Federal Reserve were made in June of 1912. Now, why this is important is because at the time, that is when the Rothschilds came for their money. We didn't know how to pay them. At that point, Congress was printing money on demand whenever they want to do a project and essentially spending it into existence. The Rothschilds came up with this great idea. They didn't, and this is amazing because of how rich they were, but they didn't have the power to enact it yet. The idea was to get a central currency that they controlled the value of. Now, I know it's a conspiracy theory. I said central currency, ooh, the World Bank, but that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is they saw at that point that America, the country that they had financed, was becoming the powerhouse of the planet. And how do you control a country? You control its money. So, in order to pay back the Rothschilds, America agreed to create the Federal Reserve. Now, the Federal Reserve is still in existence today. It is controlled by 12 families. And I say families. I didn't say people. I didn't say corporations. I didn't say organizations. I said families because this is a position that is passed down through familial lines usually. There is no regulation. There is no oversight. They are in complete control. Even though Congress has the power to make the currency of the realm, they have legally opted to give complete control to this outside business called the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve prints money and in several ways controls its value. Now, they cannot outright say this is the GDP value of a dollar. They don't have that ability, but they can control the interest rates. Basically, if you want me to print money and give it to you, you have to give me this much back, which makes no sense. You're printing it, just print some for yourself. I know it's a simplistic view of it, but that is what it is. They're printing the money and then charging us for printing it. Not only that, but they can literally determine how much money is going to be printed. But Congress said print this much. We're not going to. It's as simple as that. They are a private organization. They are controlled by, as I said, 12 families. Only 4 of these families are American. The rest are from other countries. And I could go down the list, but I'm not because that would be a long time to explain who's who and what's what. The point is why is the government not in control of our finances? Why is an outside corporation in control of our finances? Not only an outside corporation that isn't controlled by any American. It's mind-boggling that we are allowing this to happen. Now, so they start the Federal Reserve to pay back Rothschild and a couple other people that I haven't named yet. They will come out later in future videos as we get there. and they're going to be paid back through the interest the Federal Reserve makes, the charges that the Federal Reserve levies against the government for printing money. Now, but why is this a good deal for the Rothschilds? He's just getting his money back that he gave to us, right? Sounds all fair, sounds all good, and it sounds exactly how it should be. Wrong. He wanted the Federal Reserve because he wanted to control the value of money. And at that time, America was becoming a powerhouse. It wasn't quite the top dog yet, but it was getting there, and they saw that the dollar was becoming the global currency. And what I mean by that is not that every place took the dollar, because even in today's world, there are countries where you can't spend the dollar. What I mean by that is most other economies in the world at that time and well into the 2000s judged the value of their money against the value of a dollar. So if you control the value of a dollar, you control the value of every other money on the planet. So not only was he getting an infinite money glitch, he was determining how much that infinite money was worth. I'm trying to keep each of these videos about 30 minutes long, and I'm really running close to my time. I know I've said a lot of and so's and things that I could have cleaned up, but you wouldn't believe the process and the problems I went through just making it this long. And nobody's paying attention to this, I bet. But even if you are, a half hour is probably all you can understand of my monotonous and my ums and ahs. So I will continue this series. We will talk about the rest of American history at some future point. I know these videos are bad. I apologize. They will get better. I'm trying my best. Hope you enjoy your day. If you have something to say in the comments, look forward to hearing from you. Other than that, have an American day.